أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Hope you all doing well, brothers and sisters, and welcome again to another live stream with the Sapiens Institute on our project called the Light Project. So I usually begin these streams just to let everyone know what the Light Project is. Bear with me. So the Lighthouse Project is a project by the Sapiens Institute which aims to do a number of things. First and foremost, to assist people who are suffering from like, let me share screen with you. So if you go to our website, sapiensinstitute.org, you can see that we've got a lot of things that we offer on this website. But if you specifically go to Lighthouse Mentoring, you will see what it is that we offer and who to. So it's specifically to help people that are suffering from shubuhat. That is, if you are worried or doubting whether or not Islam is in fact a true religion or the true religion, whether or not God exists, whether or not the Quran is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether or not the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is the messenger of Allah, then this is for you. And you have an opportunity to speak to either myself or one of the mentors that assisting us with the project. And you have an opportunity to discuss whatever it is that is affecting your iman with one of the mentors. That doesn't matter if you're someone who's a born Muslim, someone who's an ex-Muslim, someone who's a non-Muslim or a new Muslim. You're more than welcome to book a private one-to-one meeting, completely free of charge, with one of our mentors. And you do that through the link here. Click book and meet Lighthouse Mentor. And again, I want to emphasize that the service is free. But because it is free, we want you to ensure that you are accepting the calendar invites, that you're setting your own reminders, and that you're attending so that you're not wasting the time of the mentors. As obviously, if you can't attend, someone else could have done. And if you can't attend for whatever reason, and you know you can't attend, then do inform us via email, as we do contact you by email with all the links for the meeting, etc. And you, like I say, book it for free. You click here, you select the date, you click the time, etc. And you can book that meeting there. Everything is completely private. It's done through Zoom. The calls are recorded for training and quality purposes, but they are not used or turned into anything public. So they're not made into YouTube videos or anything. And like I said, it's completely free, along with everything else that we provide on our website, for example, the learning platform, where you can get access to free courses. We've just released two new courses quite recently, one on secularism and another one on Islam and LGBT. We've got many other courses. We've got a couple on Christianity by Jake, the Muslim metaphysician, a course on history by Adnan Rashid, The Divine Reality, which deals with atheism, based on Hamza Zor's book, done by Imran Hussein. We've got a couple of courses by Dr. Uthman Latif, and currently in the process of recording the third, one on being human, which is very relevant to today's issues concerning Gaza and the Uyghurs. I can never pronounce it. But it's basically on dehumanization. We've got another course on Christianity where he's interacting with William Lane Craig and his apologetic on the notion that Christianity has some sort of monopoly on the love of God. He goes to show that this is not the case. The Art of Disputation and Debate by Dr. Safri Chowdhury. We've got an Awakening the Truth, an Advanced Hour Training course, and a No Doubt course, which is our staple course specifically related to the Lighthouse Project and what we're doing today. We also offer courses in Spanish, and we are also hoping to expand into many other languages. We'll do that with your support, inshallah. So make use of the things that we are offering. Again, all of the courses here, as you may notice, are completely free. All of them are free. This is free, that's free. We don't charge for a single one of them. And if for whatever reason you prefer to read, you can go and have a look at our book. We've got a couple coming out at the moment in relation to Gaza. and Zionism, etc. We've got the characteristics of Paula, my book, Islam and Nihilism. All of our books we offer completely free. The Incoherence of Atheism, Divine Perfection, The Divine Reality. You can get access to these on our website, free of charge. Download the PDF, and we also do offer some of them on Amazon, which you can get access to by clicking there. Get a printed copy, and then it should take you to the website. Although for some reason it's a new link. You can get our book free, not for free, sorry, at minimal cost. So this is just the absolute minimum that we can charge, which basically covers the cost of printing and whatever Amazon are. But beyond that, don't make any. So alhamdulillah, we've been joined by Zubair. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. How you doing, bro?
Alhamdulillah, I'm very good. The brother Zubair is one of our fellow mentors, and he's currently helping us to expand on the Lighthouse project, venture towards new Muslim mentoring. So I'll give you this opportunity. I think this is the first time. Is this the first time you've been on Lighthouse Live?
True.
Yeah, so
Alhamdulillah.
you'd like to introduce yourself, and inshallah we can get started then with the.
Yeah, absolutely. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulullah. So I'm Zubair, also known as Coach Zubair on social media, a cybersecurity researcher by profession, and on the side, I've been focused on sharing the message of Islam with non-Muslims as well as Muslims who are trying to present the message to other folks and may get confused or may have doubts how to address some thoughts or some ideas that have been presented to them. And at the same time, when you have someone who is a new Muslim accepting Islam, how do we work with them to gradually help them develop and be a better Muslim?
Alhamdulillah. So we'll see how that obviously expands over the next few months, inshallah. We'll be looking at training people and getting them involved. So just keep your eyes out on our social media, inshallah, because we may be advertising for volunteers to help us with this project. But yeah, so other than that, today what we're going to be doing is a taster of what we offer in the Lighthouse project. Usually these are done privately on Zoom and are not made public. But for those of you who are wanting to speak to us immediately and don't mind coming onto a live stream, you're more than welcome to ask your questions either in the comments, and I will also post the link into the chat. There is one condition though. You will need to, at least, if you're not willing to turn your camera on completely for the whole time you're on, you will need to turn it on momentarily just so we can see you're not a troll while you're in the backstage, and then you can turn it off and we will bring you up front. Otherwise, oh, mashallah, we've got the gang. Assalamu alaikum, brother Abbas.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
And Jazakallah khair for joining us. Brother Abbas is a man who I do not believe needs introducing, as many of you who are subscribed are probably already subscribed to EF Dawah. But I'll give him the opportunity to introduce himself anyway. Bismillah.
Wa alaikum assalam for everybody. So, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Abbas. I don't know if I'm famous, more infamous. And I thought I would surprise Mr. Ponders today because I didn't respond to his earlier requests of joining the stream.
He didn't.
But I thought it would be a pleasant surprise, inshallah. I hope not too shocking that I've arrived at the stream. Mashallah.
Oh,
Coach Zubair is already here as well, mashallah. So that's wonderful.
Alhamdulillah. You're always welcome. I just want to check, is my microphone all right? But people in the comments saying my voice was a bit low, or that my volume is
it's all yeah. Now it's all clear. Yeah.
It sounds very clear, mashallah.
Is it fine? Okay, alhamdulillah. So if you bear with me, I'm just going to pin the link to the StreamYard in the chat. So most of you should be able to see that now. So do feel free to join us at any point. And in the meantime, while we're waiting for people to join, I will be reading the comments. I would like to ask as well, if you could just make sure that if you come on, you will need to let us know what you wish to discuss in the private chat. So just keep your eyes out for what I'm saying to you there. Don't ignore it, otherwise you won't be coming on, and I will be trying to communicate with you. So join the stream. 1 second. I'll put the link up on the bottom there as well. So for those of you who do want to book a private meeting, you can do so. Let's have a look at the comments. Most people are just saying Assalamu alaikum. So wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I hope you're all well. Let's have a look. Yeah, people just mainly talking about how the voice is fluctuating. Look at that. Abdurrahman says, yes, we all know him. MashaAllah. The big cheese. Brother Tariq wants to know where your pirate costume is.
That's funny. Yes. So last time we had a Sapiens meeting, I thought it'd be funny to put one of those. What do they call those things? Where you filters. That's right. With the pirate's hat on and a pirate's, and then, of course, for some reason, because I'm completely illiterate when it comes to social media and how these things work, I couldn't get rid of it for a good part of our meeting. So that was quite. It
reminds me of because there's a really famous video. Where there's an old man who comes to, like, he's a lawyer or something, and he joins a Zoom meeting with the cat filter.
Yeah, that's right.
And he doesn't know how to turn it off, but it's like a really serious thing.
So I was sort of being clumsy in the back, trying to get rid of it, and I had this pirate's hat on and a big pirate's beard, and I think it was an earring. I can't remember now, but anyway, I thought it was rather funny. But Tariq, Jazakallah khair for reminding me about that. That was hilarious. Yes.
Alhamdulillah. So I'm just gonna get this running on the bottom, inshallah. There's no one joined yet. The chat's not that active.
So, Brother Yusuf, I mean, we've been doing this Sapiens for a while, and there are a lot of there's a lot of common themes that we seem to be getting a lot, especially with people. I would say predominantly we find people are getting doubts and these type of things from dodgy websites and dodgy YouTube channels.
Yeah.
Are you guys finding the same sort of thing? That's a very regular theme that comes up a lot.
Yeah, sometimes it feels people's. I don't know what it is and why people do it this way, but it's like they go out. It's like they're searching for these things. Sometimes they'll find a doubt, and then before they have resolved this issue, they'll put it in this little bank, and then they'll just keep searching, and they'll find more, and then they'll add that to the bank, and then they'll find more, and then they just keep adding, and they end up with this huge list of things where they're just like obsessively looking for doubts without making any effort to actually resolve them. And then they come to us, and they have this huge list of things that they want to discuss, and it's like 20, 30, 40. I've had some with like 50. There was one brother a couple of years ago. He was emailing, and he was like, I have this list of 1,000 million doubts. It was over 1,000 doubts. And he was like, I need to get like the Muslim Avenger super team together. I need Muhammad Hijab. And he's just like listing all of these people. And he's like, you need to make a channel, and I'm going to give you my list, and all of you need to work as a team to resolve all of them. I'm like, have you been through all? And it turned out he hadn't even watched the majority of them, but he was like owning them. And he was referring to them as his doubts. And when you ask like individuals like this to reiterate what it is that they're doubting, what's the problem? They don't even really understand what the issue is. Like just the mere fact that someone has addressed something and referred to it as a problem or as a defeater for Islam, that's enough to make them scared, whether or not they understand what it is. And I find this is really common, like scarily so, where people they don't really understand what it is that's scaring them, but it scares them. I don't know if you have the same thing.
Yeah. So if I may add, so I think usually like when I'm starting my calls, one thing I always try to bring up to the conscious attention of the person calling in is the why, the reasoning behind it, what's causing it, as opposed to just addressing the symptoms. And I know most of us already do that. And I like to divide it usually in the three streams here. So one is, for example, I use analogy of, let's say you have picked up a diet program or a workout plan, and instead of you following it and doing it, what happens is that if you realize it's too hard, I can't do it, and you want to get out of it, you try to find, yeah, you know what, it's not the most effective dieting plan
Yeah.
or most effective workout plan, and so on and so forth. So the idea is that you have somehow psychologically decided, I want out, but I don't want to feel guilty. So I want to put all the blame on that, right? So that's where
Yeah.
sometimes people like start like chasing those things. Or
Yeah.
alternatively, it could be that, well, I love it and I want to share it with the people. And then you start talking to someone who really, really hates it. And now you're trying to convince them, and instead of you convincing them, you basically start, saying, well, I don't have the resources to fight them, which is a good thing. However, you have to be sure that, look, you have enough time in your life to go after those individuals, because there's a lot of individuals who are not as opposed to the idea of whatever you are subscribed to. So you might have more success if you share the message with them. But if you go with the ones who are totally on the other extreme, that's where you might have issues. And lastly, the third theme is that you're neutral. You're just living your life. You're following the workout plan that you like, but you're surrounded by people who are causing doubts, right? And that could be something that can happen in your marriage, right? So, or with your business partners, like you have other people who are like, well, what if this person is not loyal to you? What if they're cheating on you? This and that, right? Now you're spending your time and energy and resources just to repel those doubts, as opposed to flourishing your business partnership or your marriage or what have you. So in that scenario, it's like, well, just take a look at who you are listening to, who you're giving attention to, right? So these are the three common themes that I see, which kind of lead to that.
I normally find it very helpful, actually, asking the person, is it wise to learn about your religion from people who are often paid agents to cause doubts in your religion? Are those the people you should be going to find out about your religion? Or people who are ignorant about your religion, should you be going to those people to find out about your religion? And obviously the common sense answer to that is always no. And so that sort of often, I think, works in a sense, because people tend to then reflect upon, why am I actually doing what I'm doing, you see? And the other thing is, of course, that I try to explain to people that, look, there's no problem in dealing with doubts that people present to you, but you have to either have the time, like you guys have mentioned, to then do the relevant legwork, the relevant exercises necessary to counter the doubt, or at least possess some basic knowledge in the beginning, foundational knowledge, that you're not shaken, and that you can actually, at the very least, not allow that type of doubt to fester and sort of solidify and become sort of foundational in some, the roots of it to be sort of grow into yourself, into your heart. And a lot of people, I think, they do seem to reflect on that, and they do realize that actually it's not wise to learn about anything in life, whether it's, I mean, you wouldn't learn about, for example, geography from somebody who is person who is a very passionate flat earther, for example. You wouldn't go to find out about what the shape of the world is, or somebody who denies, for example, that the stars exist, or anything, like anything like that, any sort of radical view. You wouldn't then go to sort of go and study with that person to learn about science, would you? I mean, it's sort of tantamount to that, really,
Yeah. And it's funny as well, because you have this a lot where, like, the analogy I usually give is the one of the boxing. Like, they watch some fighters like Khabib or something knock Conor McGregor out, and they're like, MashaAllah, he's a Muslim, I'm a Muslim, I'm gonna go knock out Conor McGregor. And then he sees Conor McGregor, starts picking a fight with him, gets beat up, and then he's like, oh, how can Islam be true if I was to be defeated? And like, this happens with debate all of the time. Like, you have some young, overly confident, overly zealous individual who's had absolutely no training whatsoever in debate, disputation, logic, reasoning. Maybe they have like a really bad argument, like, I saw the name of Allah written in the seeds of a watermelon, therefore Islam is true. And he's trying to show these people, and this argument gets defeated. And then he's like, oh, Islam must be false. It's like, no, like, if I give you a bad, another example I give is, if I give you a bad argument for the existence of chickens, it doesn't mean chickens don't exist.
Yeah.
And if I've given you a bad argument, then the fault is mine. And defeating a bad argument doesn't mean the conclusion of that argument is false. And this is another thing people get mixed up with, and I hear it a lot, where they have these bad arguments. Eventually someone sort of undermines them or defeats them, and they're like, oh crap, what do I do? But it's unfortunate, but it's one of them, alhamdulillah. But like I say, that's why we're here. So if you are someone like that, you're welcome to book a meeting. You can speak to one of us or one of the other brothers. There's a few of us now, and we're growing in size, inshallah. And if you are interested in becoming a mentor, there is a possibility, depending on your experience and things like that, to become a part of the team. If you do, or this is something you're interested, please send your application with your CV and a covering letter to lighthouse@sapiensinstitute.org, inshallah, and I can contact you if I feel that you have the skills that we're looking for to become a part of the mentoring.
And, you know, Yusuf, the other thing is that mashallah, this sort of work is so important, because at times you meet people who are literally in tears. They've been so shaken. They've stopped praying. You know, their whole life is upside down. And then, alhamdulillah, you know, sometimes after an hour, they're happy, they're laughing. It's a huge burden that's been lifted. And it's sometimes something that's been festering for many months or even years, subhanAllah. And it's sort of slowly taken them down a path where, as I say, they stop practicing their religion. The doubts become so strong. And then, subhanAllah, when at the end of the discussion, they just realize just how unfounded and how completely they were duped, and they were tricked into sort of accepting certain things. And these doubts actually were just nonsensical, really, subhanAllah. So, mashallah, this work that Sapiens are doing is very, very important. Dawah is not just to non-Muslims. Obviously, most of the people that we're dealing with, Yusuf, are of course Muslims, aren't they? And there's a great need for this as well. And what we do find is that in many parts of the world, because of this false impression of secularism and scientism and all of these other isms, that people often are looking up at these sort of societies that they feel are dominant societies in the West. And they're swayed by some of these very tricky and often very unfounded sort of shallow arguments, just because they're already at this sort of situation where they're looking up to a particular dominant society that they feel is dominant. And that can be very, very sort of very difficult to sort of counter. And sometimes not to sort of, you know, talk ill of our scholarship, mashallah. Of course, our scholars, our imams, and our you know, our alims, our muftis are doing a great job, alhamdulillah. But often they're not equipped with tackling some of these arguments that are provided by these critics within the Western world, I think, you know.
Yeah, if I were to like add to that, so there's two angles that are, and I think you mentioned that about that. Who would you go to learn, right? So I think there's two sides of it. One is your nourishment and development, right? And many times people that we talk to, they haven't done any sort of, you know, systematic studies or anything. Like they may not have even read the translation of Quran under, you know, a reputable and a balanced teacher and what have you. And as you mentioned that, you know, a lot of the time in general, the scholars, the du'as, the teachers, they are focused on preventative and nurturing side of things, right? Which is what we need for our bodies as well. That you have a nutritionist, you have a dietitian, you have a personal trainer, and they're going to be focused more on that development and nutrition there. However, what we primarily may do from a Lighthouse side is more of a response side, right? Response medicine or what have you. And that is just dealing with something that has, you know, affected someone psychologically, or an idea that's like you kind of have gotten tangled, right? And that may not necessarily require a lot of, you know, basic, a lot of deep knowledge of Islam. That may not be something that someone with a traditional murabbi, a developer, may require, right?
Yep, definitely. I've just noticed someone's joined us in the back. So he's asking a question, but it's very vague. So you just need to be a bit more specific, brother. Also, if you want to join, please do turn your camera on momentarily, just to give the camera a little wave so I can see that you're not a troll. And then, inshallah, if you can answer my questions, like what specific, like, this is for anyone else who joins over the next however long we do the stream for. If I'm asking you questions, and this is relevant not just, I guess, for the private chat, for the live stream, but also when you book an appointment in your application, try not to be so vague. You need to be very specific. And what I mean by that is that you need to like explain what your question is. So, like for example, in the application form, it says, "Tell us what your doubt is, what questions you have, etc." And someone will just say, "I have a doubt." It's like, well, we know that you've booked a meeting, you've selected the doubts option, so we know you have a doubt. But what do you have a doubt about? I have a doubt about the Quran. Right, but what? Like, give the mentors something so that they, if they need to, can prepare for the meeting, and so that we can help you, and like make a bit of effort with the application. It doesn't need to be like an essay. It doesn't need to be 20 pages long. It can be a short paragraph, but so long as we can have some idea to some degree of what problems you're facing, this is going to help us, inshallah. Also, brother, you've put something in the back chat, but it's a bit confused. All right, okay. So, and what's the question that you have about these things? Let me know. And while you're doing that, or what's the problem exactly? And is this a doubt or is this just a question? Because this is another thing. It's not a fatwa service, and I'm not saying that the brother in the back is asking for a fatwa. But this is another problem we have sometimes with people booking meetings. They treat it like a fatwa service. It's not. It's specifically to help people deal with doubts. So while the brother's gonna be commenting in the back, I'll see what's being said in the comment section. It's a really good question, and it's by a brother, and I was meant to get back to him about this. So the issue about morality, and this is something that I've noticed a lot even with Muslims as well, is they get hung up on this word objective, subjective, objective, subjective. And to be honest, it's a new word. It's a new word, and it comes with a lot of baggage. It's more specifically related to the sciences. And when we're talking about objective, we're talking usually, when we're talking in the sciences, we're talking about things that you can tap, you can measure, you can check. Morality doesn't seem to be similar to physical things. What is typically meant is that these things are going to be wrong or right in all cases at all times. But there's many things that you would find in the Quran and it shows that this isn't even the case with Quranic morality. Like, for example, if I was to ask the brothers on the panel with me, is eating pig permissible? What would your answer be? Either one of you.
Depends.
Depends. Yeah, so would you say that it is objectively the case that eating pig is impermissible?
Yeah, in normal circumstances, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a conditional statement, isn't there? There's, if this circumstance is the case, then this is the outcome. If that circumstance is the case, then that is the outcome. So there's a type of conditionality which depends on the context, the circumstances. With pig, Allah says in the Quran that don't eat it. Yeah, it's forbidden unless there are extreme circumstances, in which case this is something that can become not just permissible, but obligatory. If you have children with you that are starving to death and there is nothing to eat other than bacon or gammon or whatever it is, a part of the pig, you must feed it to them. You can't allow them to starve to death because you have this sort of rudimentary idea of the Sharia. We have the other example of the with Musa alayhi salam in Surah Kaf, with the killing of the boy. Yeah, so Musa alayhi salam reacts as the majority of us do. And we look at this and we say, no, this is not permissible. You cannot kill someone who is young, someone a non-combatant, so on and so forth. And Musa reacts exactly the same way as we all would do. Now, the only thing is that he has been given information about things that the general populace are not going to have access to. And this raises an interesting question, like it does in philosophy seminars. What would you do if you had the opportunity to go back in time and kill baby Hitler? Would you do it? If you were told that this is certainly what he's going to do, you were given all of that information, would the act of killing Hitler as a child be considered permissible or not in your eyes as an individual that's maybe talking about this subject. Now, typically people would say that killing a baby is wrong. You shouldn't do it. However, when you have access to other information, it can become some people can start to go, oh, it's interesting now. Maybe I would reconsider. Now, this is the problem with calling morality objective. Is it when you say that, you want to say that this thing is right all of the time, or this thing is wrong all of the time. Another example is the example of incest. Yeah, incest is forbidden. It's not something we can practice. But then when we talk about the first humans, Adam alayhi salam and his wife, and they had children, what did the children practice? If they were all the children of Adam alayhi salam, was this something permissible or not? Now, at hindsight, you might say, oh, well, they're doing something haram, but they weren't. There was no other options, and this is something that was permissible to them at the time, and it's something that became haram later on. So there is this conditional aspect to the Sharia, and the word objective doesn't really get across the point. And I think it can be misleading and confusing, and when people point out these particular problems, it can lead to shubuhat. It can lead to people doubting. Another thing is that they might refer to it and they say, well, we follow divine command theory. We say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands something, and therefore it is right or wrong. And from this, they may say, oh, well, then it's just subjective. If it's relying upon a quote, and they'll refer to Allah here as a subject, then what's the point? If your morality is subject as well, because it's or subjective as well, because it relies upon a subject, and the subject they're mentioning here is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the issue with this is that it completely misses the point of why people say that there is a problem with subjective morality. It's not because we call it subjective. It's much deeper than that. And the word subjective is just used as a tag to cover that problem. The problem is that if you rely upon human beings to try to deduce things, what you're relying upon are things that are weak, that are ignorant, that have needs, that can become jealous, so on and so forth. And there are many things that they are not aware of. And because of this, if they do make moral injunctions, they can be mistaken. They can go wrong. And they can go wrong because they have finite qualities, because of the fact that they are human. They are not God. And when we're critiquing subjective morality, it's specifically related to attributes that belong to the human being and not to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah has the perfect attributes. He is the all-knowing. He is the most wise. He is the just. So if he is going to give a commandment, then it is going to be related to these attributes. And therefore, even if you want to, and we wouldn't, again, I don't even want to use the word subjective, objective when it comes to morality, because I think it's sort of a misattribution of the terminology. I think we should just simply say that what is there wisdom behind it? Is this the right thing to do or not? And at the end of the day, human beings are weak. We are finite. We are ignorant. There are lots of things we do not know. We do not have access to the future. And so that's my issue. And people hang so much on it. And it may be the case that people close to me use this a lot. Inshallah, I'm going to try and write a book on morality in a bit more detail. That's on my to-do list. It's the next thing I want to sort of embark on, I think, is ethics. From an apologetic standpoint, how to deal with it, the different kinds of ethical systems there are. But personally, I would just say that, we obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because his commandments are going to be better than ours. And the reason that his commandments are going to be better than ours is because of the attributes that he has. And any movement away from that is going to be a failure because of the attributes that we have. You don't need to make reference to objective or subjective because they're sort of interdependent concepts as well. You could refer to the law of the land as being objective. I don't have a choice in what the law of England is at the moment. I just have to obey it. It doesn't matter if I want, like whatever it is. Think of something that's impermissible for English law, but permissible in Islam.
Speeding, let's say speeding, for example.
Yeah. So speeding. It doesn't matter if I feel safe. Speeding or like going through a red in the middle of the night happens all the time. You look in, you can see down the road. There's no cars anywhere. I could go, but it's illegal. And if I do that speed trap or the red light trap, it's going to catch me. It's going to take a picture. It's not going to take into consideration the middle of the night. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Now, it doesn't matter if I think this is permissible or not. it is objectively the case that the English law says that it's impermissible. So it doesn't matter about my whims and my fancies. So there's a way that even those can be described as objective, and they could be enshrined in a way that people just cannot question or cannot debate anymore. But then obviously there's a way you can refer to it as subjective as well. It's interchangeable. And then they do the same when it comes to Islamic morality. They can twist it and use the word subjective and say, but is Allah not a subject? Even though we wouldn't refer to him with the words other than the words that he describes himself with. The atheist comes with these kind of objections. And if they define subject as something that has a perspective, that is alive, and has a will, and it wants things, and so on and so forth, then if you define it as such, the atheist could wiggle the idea of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being a subject, man's being subjective. But then that completely overlooks all of the issues that I've just gone through. I don't know if you two brothers want to add to that.
I think the important thing really for me is that define what you mean by subjective and objective. If you mean by objective, it's the optimum decision or optimum judgment being made regardless of the circumstance. So if the circumstance changes, you are still able to make the optimum ruling. And that's what you mean by objective, is objectively correct in all circumstances. Then yes, we would say that yes, Allah is objectively correct and moral in every circumstance. That's what we would argue. But if you mean objectively, as in use of you being a very important point, where if the circumstances change and there's a different ruling, are you then saying one is objective and the other one isn't? That would be the wrong definition from our perspective. Yeah. And I think the question really, Yusuf, would be to ask the person, what would give you the ability to be able to make the optimum conclusion or judgment on every matter? What were the necessary qualities that you would have, that you would need in order to be able to accomplish that? And of course, people would have to argue that you would have to have all knowledge, all knowing. So you would have to be aware of every aspect of that particular concept, whatever it might be. And judgment, you'd have to have perfect judgment as well to be able to make the perfect optimum judgment and decision on that matter. And we would have to argue that since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already told us about himself, that he is all-knowing and he's perfectly just and his judgment is perfect and optimum, there can be nothing better, then we would accept that whatever Allah has ordained for us is perfect in every circumstance and in every way. Even if there is a different ruling, as you mentioned, with the offspring of Adam alayhi salam. And for us, for example, today, we would say that that was the optimum and objectively moral at that time, and it's objectively moral today, even though the rulings may be different because the circumstances are different. So I think that's the main thing for me, is that define what you mean by objective. Yeah. If you mean it has to be the same ruling despite the circumstances being completely different, then I would say, well, that's a flawed way of looking at it, because, you know, in winter, it might be perfectly acceptable to have a very hot fire next to you. And in the summer, it would be probably completely something that you would not want, repellent to you, because now the circumstances have changed and the need for that particular thing has completely changed as well. So I think it's very important to define what they actually mean by this term. And for us, we establish objectivity or perfection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when it comes to these rulings, is because Allah tells us about himself in the Quran. And so once we verify the Quran being from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through evidences, multifaceted evidences, and we're convinced of that fact, that this is indeed from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we accept whatever it tells us as being objectively true.
Yeah. And I just want to add one more thing to this. You can understand a conditional command, and the conditional could be considered objective in a sense. So, for example, if you say, like, we'll take the eating pig. So if eating pig, or we'll just say if X, then A, and if Y, then B. So this could be considered an objective law, and X and Y could be considered circumstances. So if circumstances are normal, X, we'll just say, means circumstances are normal, and you are fine, and you're not starving to death, and you have food in plenty that's halal, etc., then A, eating pig is haram. However, if Y, that is, for example, you are in extreme circumstances, you are starving to death, there is no availability of food other than that which is haram, then B, you must eat the pig. And this law as a whole could be considered objective, even though there are differing outcomes on it. An example of it in science would be this. So we've got the universal law of gravity. You have this, and depending on the input, depending on the conditions, you have a different output. You have a different answer. What is the force of gravity? Well, it depends on what? On the condition. The mass, so G is constant. I'll put brackets around that because technically it's not actually constant, but for the most part, it's constant, apart from some examples. And on a very minute scale, it may differ. But G is just a number with a number of SI units at the end. So the gravitational constant G multiplied by the mass of the first object, for example, Earth, multiplied by the mass of the second object, for example, the moon, divided by the distance between the two objects squared. Once you do that, you get your answer. On Earth, I can't remember what it was. Can anyone remember off the top of their head what the gravity on Earth is?
Like 9.8, no.
Yeah, I think you're right. 9.8 meters per second. It's acceleration. So yeah, per second squared. Yeah. So 9.8 meters per second squared. So that's the speed of gravity on Earth, and the force of gravity.
Yeah, so that's acceleration times your mass. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the force of gravity between the moon and the Earth is going to be a bit different because the masses are different, the distances are different, and everything is going to vary depending on the input. If you're trying to work out the speed of gravity, I'm the mass of the first object, and the mass 1 is the Earth, and mass 2 is me. I weigh much less than the Earth, and the speed of gravity is going to be roughly the same, whether it's me or whether you're measuring the Empire State Building, even though the Empire State Building is a lot bigger than me. The differences are going to be very minute because of the scale of the Earth compared to both me and the objects. But there is going to be a slight difference, and there's going to be an even more difference between the moon and the Earth because of obviously the way vastly different, and also because the distances are much greater. And even though you've got all of these different inputs, you're constantly getting different outputs, output being the answer to what is the force of gravity. And we can look, and bringing your attention again back to the to that bit at the bottom, if X then A and if Y then B, simply because you have a different output, it doesn't mean you can't refer to the thing as being objective. That is, just because there are conditions, it doesn't mean they're not objective. And if you have and another way of looking at morality is you could look at it as being a contract, a contractual agreement between you and a person of authority. And the person of authority here is the most perfect authority, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so if you have a contract with him, you are obligated to uphold that contract. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to bring Brother Muhammad on. So forgive me for leaving you waiting a bit. It's just a very interesting subject. Brother Saif is in the back as well. I think it's the same brother that asked the question. Give me a little hands up if it is, because I'll bring you on after, inshallah. All right, jazakallah khair. Yeah, assalamu alaikum, Muhammad.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Alhamdulillah, doing great as well. I'm just reading what you mentioned in the back. So basically, there's a couple of verses of the Quran and a hadith that you wish to discuss. If you could just let us know what the problem is or what the question is, and we'll go from there, inshallah.
Inshallah. So I'll start with chapter number 20 and verse number 117 to 120. Okay.
Right. So wait a second.
Basically,
I'll pull up the verse. So chapter number 20,
verse number 117.
Verse number 117
to 120.
To 120. Okay, and for the sake of the audience, let me just read the verses out. If you bear with me. and then we can discuss them. So, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So we cautioned, O Adam, this is surely an enemy to you and to your wife. So do not let him drive you both out of paradise. For you, O Adam, would then suffer hardship. Here it is guaranteed that you will never go hungry or unclothed, nor will you ever suffer from thirst or the sun's heat. Can you mute your mic for a second, bro? Just because you're rustling quite a lot. I'm going to mute you. You can unmute in a second. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. But Satan whispered to him, saying, O Adam, shall I show you the tree of immortality and a kingdom that does not fade away? So they both ate from the tree, and then their nakedness was exposed to them, prompting them to cover themselves with leaves from paradise. So Adam, alayhi salam, disobeyed his Lord and so lost his way. Was that it up to that verse?
Yes.
Okay, and so what's the issue?
So I want you to bring your attention on 118 and 119 verse, where Allah says, "Here you shall not go hungry or be naked, you shall not thirst nor feel the sun's heat." So Allah is saying to them that you will not be hungry and you will not feel any thirst. But the question is, in other places of Quran, Allah mentions yani the foods and the drinks in the paradise. So what I want to ask is that if a person is not gonna feel hungry or feel feel thirsty, then what is the point of these foods and these drinks?
Yeah, this is simple. It's because they're delicious. It's an enjoyment to eat them.
Have you ever eaten or drank something without being hungry or thirsty?
I have all the time ice cream. I could be completely full for my dinner, but there's always room for dessert.
Exactly.
Why? Because it's delicious. I enjoy it.
It feels great when you have something that's very, very tasty.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an enjoyment, isn't it?
Okay.
Do you understand?
Yes, I get it.
Okay, alhamdulillah.
Okay, so
And,
let's
and
move
just
to
to
the
quickly
next,
add one sec to it, right? So even in general, like when you have, two verses in the Quran, what we do is like you combine them so that you can have an understanding that you can understand both things together, right? So as the brother said, it could be about why you're doing it, even though you don't need to. And secondly, you are not hungry because you have food and water available to you. You're not naked because you have clothing available to you and you're wearing it, right? So either or.
So the next verse I want to talk about is basically the I would say chapter number 57, verse number 1. Okay.
Yeah, one moment. Let me
Surah Al-Musabbihat,
Chapter 57,
verse 1.
verse 1.
Okay. And as Yusuf brings it up, what's the question? That's about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being glorified. Okay.
Yeah, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Whatever is in the heavens and the earth glorifies Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for He is the Almighty, the All-Wise. Bismillah.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
So where Allah Ta'ala is saying that everything in the heavens and the earth glorifies God. As we are Muslim, we are doing this. Alhamdulillah. The trees are doing this. Everything on the earth and the heavens are doing this. But for example, the one who does not believe in Allah, so how are they doing the glorification of Allah?
Yeah, so
They do not
that's the
believe in
exception,
God.
isn't it? So He's referring to things like everything in the heavens and the earth, specifically that which has been created, apart from those with free will. Because Allah makes it clear elsewhere in the Quran that there are disbelievers. So you have to understand this in the context of the Quran holistically. Because this is 57. It's already made mention of many things prior to this, of people, of jinn, for example, that disobey Allah. But He's saying, obviously, apart from these, everything in the heavens and the earth glorifies Allah.
Can you, if you remember that verse, can you tell me the verse?
What, the verses that talk about disbelievers?
No. The verse that says, apart from the one who disbelieves in God,
No,
yani they
so that,
glorify the.
yeah, you misunderstand. So it's not that it says apart from, it's that the Quran gives the context that there are people with free will. So there are disbelievers, and it talks about disbelievers all the time, multiple places, 353 search results. So when you're reading this, you're understanding that there is a class of people within the humans and the jinn who are rebellious. Yeah. And then when it's making, so it's not that the people that are hearing this are unaware of the fact that there are disbelievers. Yeah. And so then when it's saying this, whatever is in the heavens and the earth glorifies Allah, it's making reference to everything apart from those from the jinn and the human beings. Those who are those who can be disobedient because they have been given a will. They have been given the ability to disobey.
Okay.
I think the main issue is, Brother Muhammad, we do not just take one verse in isolation to get the tafsir of exactly what that means. The Quran is the tafsir of itself, you see. And so the accountability is given to human beings and jinn, because human beings and jinn have been given free will. The stones, the rocks, the mountains, and everything else doesn't have free will. It glorifies Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How it does that, we don't know. This is ilmul ghaib. This is unknown to us. But Allah has given free will, choice to human beings and to jinn. And this is why they are going to be judged accordingly, because they had a choice. They could choose to believe and submit and glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or they could choose not to. And so this is why they will go through judgment.
Okay.
Quickly, I want to add something here, which is related to the previous questionnaire about morality. And that was, see how Allah is, in your original question, you said, how can I convince someone that the creator's morality is subjective or something like that, right? So
that
as
was
you see, yeah, I know. But because of this, I just wanted to quickly point out something. So see, when the Quran describes the creator, he's also giving you other names and attributes. So the names and attributes that you see here, Aziz al Hakim, which is what Yusuf mentioned earlier, is A, that Allah has the authority, and B, he's the one with the authority and the right to dictate the law. But at the same time, is al Hakim, he's all wise. So all of his orders, all of his commandments are based on his wisdom. So that's also, he's not just the creator. He's a creator who is Aziz. He's a creator who is Hakim, and so on and so forth. Just wanted to point that out quickly.
Jazakallah khair. And was there other questions you had as well? Other verses you wish to discuss?
Yes. Chapter number 65, verse number 4.
Okay. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. As for your women past the age of menstruation, in case you do not know, their waiting period is 3 months, and those who have not yet menstruated, as well as for those who are pregnant, their waiting period ends with delivery. And whoever is mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will make their matters easy for them. And so what is the question related to this?
So basically here Allah is talking about the iddat of those women who have attained menopause and who has not yet menstruated. Okay. So can, yes,
I don't think menopause is mentioned here, is it?
Yeah, so
the
menopause,
past the age of
I say, yeah, is, yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, say that again.
Did I say something wrong?
No, I'm just saying, you said menopause. Menopause, I don't think is mentioned here.
Yeah, I don't think the issue is with the menopause anyway. So
yeah, because menopause means somebody who stops having their period in old age, and they go through a hormonal change in their body. This is generally an older woman, normally past 45, 50, 55. This is when menopause can sort of come in. So I don't think I just wanted to sort of correct. I'm not trying to be pedantic. It's just in case people might get the wrong end of the stick or not really understand what you're saying. But I think you mean menstruation and somebody who hasn't started menstruation. Is that correct?
Basically, there was a net issue, so I couldn't hear you.
Not a problem, Brother Muhammad. Ask your question anyway, inshallah.
Are you there?
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes.
But now you're not. I don't know if you're talking. You said, "Are you audible?" and then we couldn't hear from you anymore. Is he still there?
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay, so the question is, Allah says in this verse that, and that will apply likewise to those who have not yet menstruated. Okay?
Yes, this is quite simple.
Allah mentions the iddat of those women who have not yet menstruated. So I want to ask that, is this verse telling us that having intercourse with prepubescent girl, is it allowed? And if not, then why Allah has mentioned the iddat of those women who have not yet menstruated? Because we know from from the Quran or Hadith that if you marry a woman and before having intercourse with her, if you divorce her, then there is no iddat for her. So if you marry a woman who has not yet menstruated and you divorce her, then why there is need of the iddat?
Yeah, because so the assumption here is that it's only young people that have not yet menstruated. So the Sharia is very clear with regards to who you can engage in marriage with. It's not an arbitrary age. There are a number of conditions. One of them that they need to be physically and mentally mature. That they obviously need consent, and then that the parents can consent to that as well. Although there's a slight disagreement with whether or not the parents need to be involved, and whether or not the woman could just make the decision on her own. But there are a group of individuals that have what's referred to, I'm not going to pronounce it right, but amenorrhea. I can't say the word. But this is basically the absence or the cessation of menstruation. Primary amenorrhea is defined as the failure to establish menstruation by 15 years of age. So if someone is, say, I don't know, 18, 16, 17, 18, and they have not yet menstruated, but they are still considered an adult. So, for example, you would look at them and think this person is an adult, but for whatever reason they have not menstruated, they would fall under this category for that injunction, and you would still be expected to give them an iddah. So it's not simply the case that children, i.e. 3, 4, 5, 6, non-menstruation, are those under the category of non-menstruation. It can affect people older than that. And again, because the law is very specific with regards to making reference to whether or not they are capable of engaging in such practices, this is incredibly important. So if someone is like a child, for example, 4, 5, 6 years old, you would not be allowed to engage with them because they're just not ready for that physically, mentally, etc. And obviously the class here could be considered someone who is physically ready in terms of their size, but not specifically ready in terms of menstruating yet, if that makes sense.
And also it's very important, Brother Muhammad, that Islam is not just about the aspect of menstruation. The Prophet, peace be upon him, gave us a whole list of conditions, and one of the conditions that he gave us is that the social customs of the time should also be taken into consideration. So what does that mean? Now, as we explained before about morality and about objectivity, what we mentioned was that different circumstances can and often will influence the rulings. So, for example, if a society in the Amazon jungle, they have a completely different social dynamics, they have a different life expectancy, they have a different level of education when it comes to their maybe young girls at 15 or 16 or 14 or even 12 or 13, right? from a Western society. So in a Western society, we may judge that our life expectancy, education level, and all of these things, maturity, therefore readiness for marriage, comes much later. So society may collectively deem 15 or 16 to be the youngest age at which marriage can be undertaken. And that would therefore Islamically be the correct methodology. Now, in the Amazon jungle or somewhere like that, they may decide 9 or 10 years old. As soon as the girl is able to have children, she's menstruated, they may decide that this is perfectly adequate for the girl to get married or to start having children, because their life expectancy actually may be very much lower than ours. So it's not about where a lot of people will then say, oh, this means child marriage, because the whole concept of what was child and what was adult throughout all of human history was not a arbitrary age of 13, 14, 15 or 16. It was a physical, mental condition of the girl, and also the external circumstances and cultures that were influencing that particular thing. But Brother Muhammad, before Brother Zubair might want to add anything, I'm just wondering, where are you getting these questions from?
Actually, I have started understanding Quran recently, so I ponder upon these verses myself, so I get these questions.
Right. So have you, because the reason why I'm asking you is that often these are the sort of questions that come up from websites and polemics channels that are attacking Islam, and what they tend to do is they tend to say, this therefore means because she hasn't menstruated, it's talking about a child, a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, 8-year-old, whatever it might be. And in fact, that's not what the Quran is actually referring to at all. And it completely ignores all of the nuances that go with this subject. So that's why I'm sort of asking you. Now, if you've just encountered this through your own reading and you haven't encountered this from an external source, then that's fine. But if you have encountered these things from people who are doing polemics and they're arguing against Islam, I would just say to you again, gain the knowledge first and then enter into these places. Don't do it the other way around. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up to fail. But Zubair, I don't know if you want to add anything to that at all.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Okay, so yeah, definitely. Just building on what Abbas said, that's what I was going to highlight. So there's two things that I highly recommend to you, Muhammad, and anybody else who is listening, right? Because as Muhammad said, as Abbas said, that this is something very common. Actually, just before this call, like an hour ago, I was looking at the same question being posed, right? And at the same time, I was thinking, look, if you see something being paused by an atheist or whatever you want to call them, is saying, okay, just ask the question, what is the Islamic teachings around this topic? Because this is also related to the next question that you're going to bring up again, right? Because what happens is if you just look at one verse or one ayah, Quran was not revealed in a fashion of like a constitution, like a US constitution. It's based on the timing, the events, and so on and so forth. So when the jurists, they derive a ruling, they're looking at the whole of Quran, the whole of Hadith, the whole of the Sunnah, and so on and so forth. So whenever you run into this, or any of you is listening, or what have you, run into an issue, ask the question, obviously you have all the websites available, what does Islam say about X, Y, Z? And then you get the complete picture as opposed to looking at one verse at a time. The second thing I also want to highlight, and this is something also that Abbas mentioned, but from a generic perspective.
Sorry? Are you listening, brother? I'm just going to mute him while you're talking.
Yeah. So the second thing is, when it comes to the Islam, right? You have basically things that you must do, and things that you should not do, and these are the core, right? Most of the time, when we are talking to people who may get confused or maybe may have objections, this is related to the stuff that's in the middle. So it's not something you must do to become a good Muslim. It's not something that you must leave to become a good Muslim. It's giving you those parameters on like, hey, this is the boundary of Islam, right? So for example, as Abbas mentioned, there are boundaries that look, the girl should agree to the marriage, she should be sane, and she should have of age, and so on and so forth. So these are the bare minimum needs. It's not saying that anyone who meets this condition should be married. No, these are the bare minimum needs. And within that, realm of Islam, people can decide what can work for them based on the time, based on their personal situation, based on the medical information, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So in the Sharia, the element of this flexibility is referred to as urf, or the way of a people or custom. And what you're saying is pretty much spot on. It's like, because this gets asked to the, when if you're giving dawah, you'll usually at some point in your life have someone come up to you and say, would you marry your daughter off at the age of X? And the answer to the question is no, I wouldn't. Why? Well, because I'm not from a time and place where this is something that people find acceptable. For the majority of history, it was considered acceptable and people didn't have a problem with doing it. And so it didn't stand out as strange or as bad or as abhorrent.
And Brother Yusuf, it wasn't just the fact that it was acceptable, but the fact was, in medieval times, 7th century, 8th century, people had a life expectancy of 28 years old, right? So you wouldn't wait till you were 18 or 20 to get married, because if you got married at that age, your child would be 7 or 8 years old and you'd probably be dead. So
there was also the invention of the teenager, which came about after the Industrial Revolution, the invention of things like the automobile, the introduction of public education that's compulsory and free to the entire populace. And it's not a coincidence that the legal age was set to the end of public education, the end of public compulsory education, because the working environment was becoming more complex. They needed to have more educated people dealing with more complex jobs. And so this was, from a capitalistic perspective, something that was required. So they pushed it and they started getting people put into public education. Even the way that it was set up on very factory line settings. Like the only thing that people have in common is the year of manufacturer. And then they're just sort of put 1 year after the other information in, answer this test correctly. If not, we throw you out. And so things transformed how we view the human being. Historically, you were a man when you hit puberty, when your voice changed. And historically, you were a woman when you started to menstruate. And there wasn't this public education, and people weren't engaged in leisure time or education for 18, 20 years. They just didn't have that luxury. It just wasn't an option. And if you are dependent, and the majority of people, laymen, especially around the world, are in what we would call now extreme poverty, but at the time was just the standard way of life for the majority of people. You didn't have the luxury of just having your children be dependent upon you until they were 18 years of age, not contributing at all. They were expected to start to become functioning adults the second that the society considered them able to do so. So in the UK, in Manchester, a famous thing, that the lads, when they would start becoming old enough to work, they would send them to the mines. And once they were working in the mines, they would take them to the pub and they would get their first drink, and they would start to get drunk. And people, they were considered men. And if they were earning a wage and they were considered able to have people dependent upon them, and there was someone they were interested in, then they would become dependent upon them. They would arrange marriages and things like that with people. This wasn't uncommon. It's not unheard of. So in terms of like the other things have changed, and we look at people differently. And there's certain people that you might look at today that are 18, 19, 21, and you might see them as childish, as immature, as themselves being completely dependent and not ready for marriage, despite the fact that they're fully grown and fully functioning. And then another question you can ask is, well, how are we approaching this? Are we approaching this from an atheistic perspective? And if we are we just animals? And then if we're just animals, with the animal kingdom, there's no sense of, oh, well, this animal hasn't yet quite reached the age of maturity. And so like with the animal kingdom, across the board, an animal is considered ready for procreation the second it starts to menstruate. There's no exceptions other than the human being. And the question is, well, why is there exceptions for the human being? And the reason is, for the atheist, what is the reason? And you can say, oh, well, there's much more chance that things could happen here than if you weren't to have it. Well, there's much more chances you could get run over by a car if you allow people to drive vehicles on the road than if you don't. The death rates for people on the road driving with vehicles is higher than a world that doesn't have cars. There's a lot of people that alcohol, for example, kills a lot of people. Yeah, and it harms societies, but they still consider that permissible. And not only that, births after a certain age referred to as geriatric birth. So if a woman is 30 years or older, it's a horrible word, but it's the word they refer to it as. These are referred to as geriatric births, and that means that the children that come from these births have a higher degree of likeliness of becoming deformed or having problems or genetic issues. Should that become immoral? It's not. So it's a complex question, yeah, and it's not really something people discuss in too much detail. I'm not advocating that we should lower the ages or anything like that. I'm just saying that when you scratch the surface of this question, it becomes clear that it's not because it is an absolute, an objective, abhorrent moral norm that we've left behind because we've somehow become more civilized. No, the reason is because the world has changed, the way we look at people has changed, and we have extended childhood because we have the luxury to be able to do so. People that are in our care can be in our care for much longer, and so we feel comfortable treating them as children for much longer. And that's it. And the society has been doing this for so long now. We've developed an extra concept, which we call the teenager. And it's not even as if we don't understand that these people are sexually active. In the public education system, this is something that they are taught about. Why? Because we know that the second they start to hit puberty, they become interested in the opposite gender and they become interested in this behavior. To the degree that when I was in year 6, they were giving us sexual education. In year 6, I'd have been about 10 years old. When I got into high school, they started teaching us about how to have safe sex. They were showing us how to wear condoms, how to use contraception, the pill, abortions. All of these things were embedded into the public education system for the teenager because they are completely aware that teenagers are engaging in this type of behavior. So is it okay to do or is it not? Because if it is okay, then obviously they're going to be teaching you how to do it. They're understanding, they're trying, not only that, they're telling you that it's completely normal behavior, etc. So there is a degree to which the modern world understands that people at this age do engage in this behavior. But then there's this cognitive dissonance where all of a sudden it's also completely wrong. And which is it? So obviously there's a huge discussion to be had about that. And I don't want to take up the whole stream just on this one particular topic. So we'll leave it there. Jazakallah khair for joining us, Mohammed. I'm going to let you go and we're going to bring on Brother Saif. But I hope that was of answer to your questions. And if you do want to discuss more things, if it's related to dawah or doubts, you can book a meeting with one of our mentors via this link here. Where is it gone? I've just brought it up on the stream, sapiensinstitute.org/lighthouse. And there is also a course that you can take, which is called the No Doubt course, which you can get access to on our learning platform, which is, I need to tidy up all of these buttons. If you go to learn.sapiensinstitute.org, all of our courses are on there and they're completely free and you can get access to them. And the one right at the bottom, the first one that we ever released, was called No Doubts. And it gives you 10 strategies on how to deal with your doubts and the doubts of other people. So I do recommend checking that out as well, inshallah. But thank you for your time today, Brother Mohammed. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
And so we're going to bring on our next guest, Brother Saif. Also, no, oh, he's muted. You need to unmute.
Sorry, yeah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum
Brother
assalam
Saif.
wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So Brother Saif is a friend. He regularly joins Speaker's Corner. How you doing, brother?
Alhamdulillah, good.
Brother Saif, mashallah, helps us with some of the cameras and helps us packing up. And then he very kindly joins us for food as well, which we enjoy very much together at Speaker's Corner.
Very
mashallah.
much indeed. Yeah.
So is it always because you're hungry, though?
Not necessarily. I guess there's the brotherly aspect.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. So how can we help you today with the Saif? Okay.
Yeah, so like I was just quite curious about that the like problem of how you would convey to someone that I guess the morality given by a creator would be the right one, if that makes sense. And I think you gave me a better perspective on it. With because like I was sort of in dialogue with someone about this, and they sort of said that anything subjective would is anything that comes from a mind, which I didn't quite agree with, but I sort of
Yeah. So this is the thing, because what you can define a subject as being something that is mind dependent, or something related to something conscious, or something alive. So like bats have a subjective experience. They have a perspective. Human beings have a subjective experience. And then if that is the case, then you could define anything that has a perspective. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a perspective. He is the all hearing, the all seeing, the knowing. He is alive. He's a real existing being with a will, and as an identity. He has names, he has attributes. So if you just want to sort of make it so vague that that's what you're referring to as a subject, then, and I wouldn't personally use it, but the atheists might insist on this is how I define a subject. If this is how you define a subject, Allah, as far as you're concerned, falls under that category. Then it becomes subjective. But this is where the importance of semantics comes in. Define your term. Now the question is okay, but why do we say that subjective morality is problematic? And the reason is not just because it's a subject, it's because of the attributes related to the subjective. And this comes out of mostly a secular sphere, where people are discussing morality. Is it objective? Is it subjective? What they mean specifically with subjective is not rooted in a being that has attributes that are all-knowing, all-wise, the most just, the most merciful, etc. They're not referring to that. They're referring to humanity. And there's different forms of subjective. Are you talking subjective on an individual level? So like, is it personally subjective? So I decide my morality for myself. Or is it more of a communal thing? Like, for example, moral relativity, or moral relativism, which is more subject to a wider scale. It's not just about what you think, but it's about what the community thinks. And then there's a whole question about where do you draw the lines? Where does a community end? Where does a community begin? What do you do when you've got competing communities? What if one community considers itself superior to another and wants to override that community? Like, there's all these weird conversations, but these are subjective and they're problematic, not because they're subjective, but because of human beings being ignorant of many things, because of human beings being limited in terms of their reach, lack of hindsight, all of these things. And that's the issue. And so when we're critiquing things and we say, oh, your morality is problematic because it's subjective, we don't mean because it's from a subject. We mean specifically because it comes from a thing which is limited in its scope and is imperfect. That's the fundamental critique here, that it's rooted in something imperfect. Whereas we say that our morality is rooted into something perfect, that has the knowledge, the wisdom, the power, etc., to be able to give these injunctions to a degree where it can be called a wise injunction. It can be called a perfect injunction. Human beings don't have access to that. That's the problem. It's not just simply with the word subject or subjective. And it depends on like how you're defining it. So when we're critiquing subjective, it's because we are referring specifically to the limits of the subject in question. And when it comes to Allah, he's, laysa kamithlihi shay, there's nothing like him. And so the critiques that we would apply to the human being do not apply to him.
When an atheist or someone says mind dependent, would we affirm that Allah has a mind, or is that something that Allah
so it depends on how you define the mind. Now, because we have words for him in Arabic, and these are typically defined, like, for example, he's referred to as the all-hearing, the all-seeing, the knowing, the wise. He's alive. He's he has a will. And like, if you define a mind as any of those attributes that Allah has called himself, if you say a mind is X, Y, and Z, and Allah has said he is X, Y, and Z, then yeah, insofar as you are calling a mind these three things and you limit it to that, then we have no problem. If you start including attributes and things to the concept of mind that Allah has not attributed to himself, or that could not be understood, because there's also problems with regards to translation, then we wouldn't refer to him as a mind. If you mean by mind like a brain that's made up of parts, that's, you know, that's got electrons running through it, then we're going to deny that. We're going to say no. Then in that case, if that's what you mean by mind, Allah has not attributed these things to him, so we would not accept that as a word that we could reference him. If you're just using it as a word to collect a number of attributes he has affirmed, to group them, yeah, and you could do that. You can call it whatever you want. You could call it X. I'm going to call it group X. This group X is a group of attributes, and then you name 5 or 10 attributes of Allah. You refer to it as group X. You could call group X, and you could call it a mind. You could call it a subject. You could call it, you know, you can make a new word up and say, this is what I'm referring, this group of attributes. That's what semantics is. And this is the importance of asking people to define their terms. What do you mean by this? If you mean this, then yes, I would be happy to refer to that, because Allah affirms these attributes to himself. Yeah, he is the knowing, he is alive, he has a will. Yeah? And insofar if you just want to refer to a mind as these three things, then I have no problem using that word. If you mean other things and you extend beyond what we've been given in the Quran and the Sunnah, then no, we would reject that terminology. We say no, we would not apply that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he has not applied these attributes to himself.
Yeah.
So I want to add an idea here, right? And I think that can be useful, especially for people who are
brothers. Can I be excused? I've got to rush off. Is that all right?
That's not all right. Once you're in now.
Yeah.
Jazakallah khair for having me on. I really enjoyed it. And Saif, nice to meet you as well, brother. Nice to meet all of you. Alhamdulillah. And speak to you all soon again, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair for joining us.
Assalamu
alaikum. Yeah. So this idea, I think, can potentially be useful for any open-minded and truth-seeking atheist, right? Because they have this sort of uncomfortableness here that, okay, everything is so rigid and fixed and what have you. So I think one thing I wanted to emphasize so that they can see this other side, and this is something we were mentioning earlier, that you have things in Islam which are set. You must do this and you must not do that, right? And in the middle, you have things that in English we can call it permissible, or in Arabic we might call it mubah, what have you. Now, within that realm of permissible things, I think we have that sort of flexibility to experiment and use that human mind or the scientific research or whatever you want to call it to push the boundaries a bit, depending on the time, right? So for example, a Muslim ruler can say, hey, you know what, the safe limit is whatever, 60 miles an hour or 60 kilometers an hour, what have you, at this type of street, whatever, right? Things that come up new, well, should we have organ donations or not? This is something that falls into that, and then we use the principles to define if this is something that the Muslim ruler would allow or not, right? Or the state would allow or not, right? The minimum age of marriage, for example, right? So that some of those things, or even in the time of Umar radiallahu anh, when you kind of are enforcing the divorce application, when you're doing it even in one sitting because people were abusing it, what have you. So I think Islam does provide that thing as well that can be very attractive and comforting to some of the people and some of the challenges that people have to understand how. And I think in most cases, Islam provides you with a very balanced and dynamic thing that you have both the good of both worlds. So you have this static thing which is fixed, and then you also have the ability to experiment and push the boundaries or adjust the boundaries within the permissible thing.
Yeah, so it's not like moral relativism per se. It's more, it's like, I want to, yeah, we're under the umbrella of revelation from Allah, but we have the freedom to sort of make like rulings, not make rulings, but like carry out rulings based on what we've been given.
Yeah, it's a good point you brought up there, and it has one that's come up before in conversations. And I'll do the comparison. And when you know specifically what moral relativism is and what the Sharia is, it's not the same thing. So so common understanding, practice, or otherwise known as urf, is a legal concept, fiqh, and not a source of law. we do not determine that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows or forbids based on what people do or don't do. Rather, we use common understanding and practice to fill in gaps. This is the important bit. When primary texts are linguistically vague or concepts in our religious practices are not definable from other sources. For example, we might use common understanding practice, urf, to determine improper use of a car or tool that was borrowed, or we might use it to determine the value of a certain item or service provided if there was a dispute over fair payment. Similarly, if the sacred law hasn't defined what exactly something is, such as what exactly moving around a lot in prayer is, we would look at what is normally termed a lot by the average onlooker, i.e. the urf of the people. Other things that might fall into this, for example, are things that would make you stand out. So in the Arab lands, wearing bright, colorful things could be considered impermissible because it is not part of the custom. It is not urf. It's not something that is common among the people in the Arab world. However, if you go to certain places in Africa, if you wear black, that might not be part of the urf of the community, and that might make you stand out more so than it would if you were to just wear, I don't know, like a pink or a whatever colored clothing. And so it might be considered, a part of the norms of this society, and then the scholars of that area might consider this permissible, whereas it wouldn't be in a place where it would make you stand out when no one else is wearing it at all, for example. So this is urf. This is the it's specifically with relation to the gaps in primary texts or parts of the primary text which are linguistically vague. Now, what is moral relativism? Moral relativism, it comes in two parts. So the first part of moral relativism is called DMR. DMR is descriptive moral relativism. Descriptive. Yep, go ahead.
Sorry, so I have to drop at the 30 after. So I just want to add one thing, and inshallah, you please elaborate on that. I'd love to listen to it, when I'm done my meeting. So so there's this thing of urf, and I think what I wanted to also highlight, and love to hear your thoughts on that, is that where if something is not immoral, right? So something is within that permissible Venn diagram or a circle of Islam, that's where you have that sort of relativity to kind of, for example, a woman can say, hey, you know what, I don't want to be in a polygynous relationship, and she has the right to do that, right? If she can find or what have you, with a mutual agreement and whatnot, right? So that thing within itself, because it will be under the realm of accepted morality in Islam, that's where you can kind of push things around or adjust things around because it's not immoral to begin with. Would catch up on your thoughts with that, inshallah. Thank you for having me, and assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Jazakallah khair for your comments. So yeah, so moral relativism, I'll just give you a quick overview of what it is. So it's made of two parts. The first part, which is kind of like level 1 moral relativism, is DMR, which is known as descriptive moral relativism. Descriptive moral relativism is not the ought. It's not telling you how you ought to behave or how a society ought to behave. It's not telling you what is good and what is evil, objectively speaking, or what you ought to do and what you ought not to do. It is simply a description of the world. So anthropologists have gone out, scientists have gone out, and they've had a look, and they can see, there is objectively different moral systems depending on your religion, your community, your location, where in the world you are, or when in the world you were born, or when in time you lived.
Like it's a fact that you exist.
Yeah, it's a fact that there are different moral systems. Yeah, and so they're just describing the world as they see it. DMR. If you go into India, they have a moral code that is not the same as it would be in the Arab lands, which is not the same as it would be in Europe, which is not the same as it would be in, Central Africa, so on and so forth. There's just objectively the case, different moral systems depending on where you are. That's DMR. Yeah. Then there is an inference that people or some people make from DMR to what is referred to as MMR, which is meta-ethical moral relativism. And this is the claim about, like, fundamentally what morality is. And then what they say is that it is rooted in the customs of the people. And so but then there's a lot of vagueness here, because then what do we define as a people? Where do you draw the lines? What do you do when different peoples meet? What do you do if they go to war and one wins the other? How do you overcome this? But typically, MMR, or meta-ethical moral relativism, is that what is right or wrong is according to the norms of a particular group. And the particular group can be defined in different ways depending on the moral relativist. Some might just define it as depending on your religion. Some might define it as depending upon your nation. Some might define it as depending upon your ethnic group. There's many ways you could define the group to say you have an obligation to obey the laws of what is the norm of where you are. So, for example, polygamy or polygyny might be considered illegal in the UK. And so therefore, according to the moral relativist, so long as you are in the UK, if you define it in terms of the nation and the laws of the land, it is impermissible for you, or you should not practice polygyny. However, if you go to the lands where it is permissible, Africa, the Arab lands, etc., and it is considered perfectly okay to do, then polygyny is a moral thing. You can do it, and you should if you are able to. This is moral relativism, and there is a flexibility to it, and it's rooted in the collective. Yeah, so it's rooted fundamentally in a number of human beings. Yeah, so it's intersubjective in a sense, in that it's like you have, this data set, and this particular group, you can call it whatever you want, group X, the majority of X, that is, follow this opinion, therefore the society as a whole should follow this opinion. And there's a kind of democratic nature to it as well, if you follow. It's like the rule of the many. But then again, it's like, what do you do? Like, for example, with the colonial West, yeah, they consider themselves to be superior to all other races. Yeah, the white European considered themselves to be morally superior, and so they went out and they would colonize and try to what's the word that was used? To save. But what's the word?
Civilize, is it?
Civilize. Yeah, we're going to civilize you. You're a barbarian. We have this superior morality. We're going to give it to you because, we are these morally superior beings, and you're going to become civilized. Yeah, like the white Western man. Now, that was a part of their moral code. So from a moral relativist perspective, yeah, they thought that this was good and that they should do that. And so as a community, you should go out and you should uplift and civilize the world. But then the people that are being civilized from a moral relativist perspective.
Yeah, they have their own position, which is also like relatively valid.
From a moral relativist perspective, yeah. And they might say, yeah, no, our position is superior to yours.
You're at a standstill.
Exactly. So how does the moral relativist resolve this? Because if colonialism is implicit within the moral system, as far as the moral relativist is concerned, colonialism is permissible. But then it gives rise to a contradiction, or it gives rise to a conflict that needs to be resolved. And then maybe one way of resolving it might be to just make reference to the will to power, or might makes right. Yeah, whoever wins the battle ultimately is the one whose moral system. But then this is just sort of reducing things to force, collective force, and it can change. And if times move forward, if we link it back to the question before, the brother was asking about, the age of consent thing was coming up.
Yeah.
So there's a flexibility to the age of consent today. You can go to Japan. The age of consent there is like 12. Yeah. And you could go to certain states in America where the age of consent is maybe the same or younger in certain states. Yeah, with parental consent. And then you go to the UK and it's 16 or 18. I can't remember if they've changed it. You can go to Korea and it's 21. Who is right? And does the Korean have the right to look at the British and say they're barbarians? And if they look at someone who's 22 years old and he marries an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old, do they have the right to call him a predator? Because within their system, this is what is moral for them. That's their law. They don't think you should marry anyone before the age of 21. So are they justified in making that critique? Or let's say you go into the future and the average life expectancy is doubled from, let's say, 80 on average to 160. And because of the a new singularity and the industrial revolution has kicked off again, and that has made the working environment, we'll just say randomly, 2 times more complex than it is today, which means that we also now make not just high school education compulsory, but we also now make university compulsory as well. And so everyone is required not to just attend high school education, but they must attend college and they must also attend university. And so they must spend 30 years of their life in education rather than just 16, or we'll say 32 because we're doubling everything. Yeah. So everything is doubled. Life expectancy is doubled. The complexity of the work environment has doubled. And so it requires that we extend public education by double. And along with that, we double the law. And let's say the aging process is reduced as well. So like whatever. Yeah. And we say, okay, so now the legal age for intercourse is 32 years of age in the year 2100. Yeah. Or 2200. We're in the year 2200. We're in the future, flying cars, all that malarkey. And we're living in this environment where the legal age is 32 years of age. Now, if they were to look back at today and say, look at these absolute monsters. Who's this 34-year-old marrying this 26-year-old?
Yeah. They
He's
use
such
the
a predator.
fallacy of presentism.
Yeah, he's such a predator. He's such a predator. Now, you can see the issue here. What is your morality grounded in? Yeah. Is this person justified? Now, and this isn't to say, oh, because it was okay in the past, therefore it's okay. That's not that argument. And when I make my argument on this subject, people often bring that up as if that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that. I'm asking you to ask the question, what is your moral injunction dependent upon? What makes something right or wrong? Yeah. And how can you be so certain? If there's this flexibility as you look through time and place, even today, yeah, if you forget time and you look around the planet, how are we determining which one's the right one? And if your answer is just, oh, it's obvious, then what you're essentially saying to me is nothing more than, I just so happen to fall upon the default position that I was raised with, unquestionably, with a leap of faith, and I've not critically thought about my position in any way. Because it may be that you're wrong. It might be that the Koreans are right, yeah, that you should be waiting until you're 21. It might be that those in the year 2200, in 2200, they might be right. Maybe we should make it 32. Yeah. What is it that we're using to determine the legal age? And why are we picking these random arbitrary numbers? Are there not people who are 18, 19, 20 that might not be suitable for marriage because they're not fully developed, or they're immature, or they're still dependent themselves? Yeah. And if that's the case, why does the legal system say that it's perfectly okay for them to get married? It's not taking individuals into account in any way. It's just picking this arbitrary age and saying this is permissible. But there may be cases where if you pick an 18-year-old, there may be so many 18-year-olds today that are just not suitable for marriage. They're just not ready. Do you understand?
Yeah. No, that's very evident looking at
So
nowadays.
just link it now back to moral relativism. So moral relativism here would say that the future people would be right insofar as they're in the future, and the past people would be wrong.
Sorry, what would the like a moral relativists like sort of foundation be though?
So they're rooting it in DMR.
Oh,
so okay. Yeah. So DMR is the foundation for MMR, but MMR isn't the only inference you can make from DMR. You could also make the inference to error theory, yeah, or moral nihilism. You can become a moral nihilist.
Yeah. Because
it depends on your approach. Because DMR, there's no necessary link between DMR and MMR. There's no necessary link between DMR and moral nihilism. There's no necessary link between any ought to any is. Any is to any ought. Yeah, which is the whole is ought problem that David Hume brought up. Now, the thing is, we can look at this and describe it within our moral framework. We understand deviations from this to be corruptions. That there was a, like this, for example, this divine root, which we're going to refer to as the fitrah, and however people want to define that. And insofar as there is this connection to purity or to the default position, that can be, depending on the context of the person, corrupted either by their parents or by their social systems or by their education or their community, or just by trauma, their own issues and things like that. The environment and the social setting can affect someone's moral compass in the same way that if you've got a compass and it works and everyone's compass is pointing north, and then you can point out these people have this dodgy compass that doesn't seem to point it. If you look at it, you can determine that the compass is broken. Yeah. With moral injunctions, it's a bit harder to do. You can't, like, where does morality lie exactly? It's this meta.
Because it's not a set thing. They wouldn't say it's a set thing, is it?
You can't prod it. You can't. Yeah, you can't prod it with thermometers. You can't measure it.
Whereas, we believe in a sort of like a moral compass that sort of like exists outside of us.
Me personally, I see morality as a contract.
Yeah, it's contractual.
And the contract is related to purpose. Yeah, and function. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in multiple places, in the Quran, do not think that He has created these things in jest. Yeah, He has not created the heavens and the earth, but for a purpose. Yeah. And I think that what morality is in relation to that purpose. Yeah, in relation to, so that He can test us to see who among us are the believers. This is what I think morality is. And so morality is something related to that purpose. And this is why you see in Surah Kahf, for example, there are things happening, and Musa alayhi salam is reacting like us. Yeah, he's saying this is, and he even describes what Khidr is doing as surely an evil thing. Yeah, maybe I can pull the verse up. Does anyone, if someone can tell me what verse it is in Surah Kahf? Khidr. Does anyone in the chat know? 5 brownie points to anyone who can tell me the verse with the story of Musa alayhi salam and Khidr. Khidr. How do you say his name? Khidr,
I think.
Khidr? Is it not Khaf?
I think you, but yeah, Khidr.
Khidr. No points yet. No one's said. I'll just search Khidr. No results for Khidr? Surely that's how you spell his name.
Maybe KDR? Or KHDR?
I've done KHIDR, which I thought was...
Oh, yeah, sorry. KHIDR.
There we go. MashaAllah. 20 brownie points to Darth. I can't pronounce his name. Darth Jim? X-Aim. Which verse is 65? Okay, let's have a look. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. So he's going looking for the wise man, and then he says, there they found a servant of ours to whom we had granted mercy from us and enlightened with our knowledge of our own. Moses said to him, may I follow you, provided that you teach me some of the right guidance you have been taught. He said, you certainly cannot be patient enough with me. And how can you be patient with that which is beyond your realm of knowledge? So here, again, there's a key thing being mentioned. And that is knowledge, information. Yeah. Moses, alayhi salam, assured him, inshallah, you will find me patient, Allah willing, inshallah, and I will not disobey any of your orders. He responded, then if you follow me, do not question me about anything until I myself clarify it for you. So they set out, but after they had boarded a ship, the man made a hole in it. Moses alayhi salam protested, have you done this to drown its people? You have certainly done a terrible thing. Yeah, he's judging it as being bad.
Yeah, at face value, it looks, at face value.
What have you done? What have you done? And yeah, exactly, at face value. So what Musa alayhi salam has done here is he's judging it based on what he knows.
Yeah.
What he knows is the events that have taken place around him. He can't see beyond that. Yeah.
Frankly, everyone does that.
Yeah, exactly. The world beyond his horizon is the ghaib, the unseen. He doesn't know anything about what's going on beyond his experience, what he can see, and whatever he's been told, and the commandments he's been given, the sharia that he has, and the law that he has been commanded to follow according to his people, which is a law for a group, which is supposed to be general, and so these are given very specific rules, and he's making a judgment based on that. And he says, "You have certain," and he's not even like questioning it in any way. Like, he's so sure, he uses the word certainly, without doubt. Yeah. Where's the word here? So when he embarked on the ship, made a hole, he said, certainly, laqad. Is that how you say it? Laqad? Certainly. So like, he's emphasizing it. Surely this is bad. Yeah, it's a grave thing. It's a terrible thing. And then, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, it says, he replied, did I not say that you cannot be patient with me? Yeah. So Moses alayhi salam pleaded, excuse me for forgetting. Yeah. And I do not, and do not be hard on me. So they proceeded until they came across a boy, and the man killed him. And Moses protested again for the second time. Have you killed an innocent soul who killed no one? You have certainly done a horrible thing. Yeah, he's judging it as bad. Yeah, like, certainly you have done a thing evil. The word here is evil. Yeah. Nukran. I'm still learning Arabic, so forgive me if I'm butchering the word. But the word here, nukra, evil. Yeah. So he's describing it as an evil thing. He answered, did I not tell you that you cannot have patience with me? And then the story goes on. So they moved. He replied. Yeah, so the third thing happens. He replied, this is the parting of our ways. I will explain to you what you could not bear patiently. And then he gives him the information. He gives him the knowledge that he didn't have prior to his experiences. And what he's essentially doing is, so Musa alayhi salam has this circle drawn around him. And he's judging it based on what's inside of that circle. And that circle includes his experience of the world, things he can see, things that he can hear, things that he can feel. And it also includes his knowledge, things that he's been told, things that he's been, things that he's learned, things he's been taught. And he's judging what he sees based on all of this. And so what then Khidr is doing here is he extends his field, his horizon. He gives him information so that he can see a bit further. And the analogy that we can use here is kind of like the watchtower. Yeah. So the man at the bottom, he might shout, it's fine. There's no enemy. We're not under attack. No one has to panic. Yeah. It's okay. Don't worry. He's on the ground floor. Yeah. He can't see nothing. His horizon doesn't really go that far, but he's stood next to a watchtower, and there's someone at the top of the watchtower that's saying, there's an army on its way. There's an army on its way. Yeah. Everyone needs to run, hide, get to arms, do whatever. And the man at the bottom's arguing with him. It's like, I can't see nothing. There's no army here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the man at the top of the watchtower says, come up to me. Come up to me. And as the man goes up and he walks up the spiral staircase, he looks out of the window. And every time he goes up a level, he can see the horizon goes out a bit further. As he gets higher, he can see a bit further until eventually he gets to the top of the watchtower and he can see what the man at the top of the watchtower can see. He can see the army beyond the horizon coming towards them. Yeah. And so he sees now, he has the same information, the same knowledge, the same experience as the one at the top of the watchtower. And so now he goes, now I understand. Yeah. And this is what's happening here, is that Musa alayhi salam is limited with the knowledge that he has been given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Khidr is someone who has been given knowledge by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even the most controversial one, with regards to the boy. Yeah. So as for the boy, his parents were true believers, and we feared that that he would pressure them into defiance and disbelief. Yeah. So we hope that the Lord would give them another more virtuous and caring in his place. So this is important. Yeah. So now with this information, we could talk about, like the example I gave about baby Hitler. Yeah. So if you were to ask most people, would they go back in time and kill baby Hitler? They'd throw the whole no killing babies thing out, or they'd at least question it. Yeah. If like you know the trolley problem.
Yeah.
Train going down a track.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've got on one track, you've got one person, and on another track, you've got 5 people. All right, let's change it up a bit. On one track, you've got baby Hitler, and on the other track, you've got all the people that Hitler killed. Yeah. You as an individual, do you pull the lever or not? Now, when you're asking the average person, they're not going to just be like, oh, I'm just going to leave it. Yeah. They're going to seriously consider pulling the lever. Yeah. And killing the baby. Yeah. And why? Why would they do that? For something that in the typical conversation, if you were to ask the average person or the layman, they would never, ever dream of saying, people, and this happens in Dawah a lot as well, where they'll say, you would never, this is absolutely immoral. This is absolutely immoral. This is absolutely immoral. But it's like, are you sure? Are you sure there might not be? Yeah. But it's like, are you sure? Are you sure? And in this sense, I'm a bit of like absence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm a bit of a moral nihilist. Yeah, I do incline towards moral
same with me. Yeah, same with me.
And it's not to say that I think you should do whatever you want. And it's not to say that if I didn't have Islam, I would do whatever I want.
There's no reason to. There's no like
I would be
consequence.
Yeah. So I would be limited by my heart, to the degree in which I feel compassion, and I have high levels of empathy. Yeah, so like I cry for like most movies that I watch, and it might just be like a bloody Lord of the Rings or something, like something silly. I get like I feel emotions strongly, and like a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing out of Gaza at the moment, it breaks my heart. And so, like, my sphere of action would be limited by, like, not wanting to cause other people that kind of pain. Yeah. But who's to say that I would always experience that level of empathy?
Yeah.
People's hearts can turn cold.
Yeah, like in maybe situations where maybe you're in dire need and something might benefit you, for instance.
Or you're harmed. Like, for example, I was a lot more trusting when I was younger. Yeah. And I would just sort of like, if you said you were my friend, if you said you were my best friend, I just wouldn't ever think you would ever do anything wrong to me. Yeah. Now, as I've gotten older, I've been betrayed so many times.
Yeah. You understand now.
I understand. Like, you can tell me that I can trust you. You can tell me you love me. You can tell me you're my best friend. But that doesn't guarantee that you will never change or that you will never betray me. Yeah. So, and it doesn't mean that I'm completely hopeless. I'm just a realist now because my heart has been affected. Yeah. So I find it harder to trust people. And you see it when certain people, the men go in their own way movement, or the red pill. Yeah. A lot of these guys are people that have had their heart broken.
Yeah.
Multiple times. Yeah. They weren't always like this. When they were younger, they were probably a lot softer.
They sort of had their like awakening.
Yeah. They were probably simps to some degree, and they wanted the attention of the female, and they probably gave it their all, and they kept getting their heart broken, and their heart broken, and their heart broken, and then it turned them into a monster. Yeah, you see this. There's a book called Ordinary Men. I'm not gonna be able to find it quick enough. You just have to take my word for it. There's a book called Ordinary Men. And the book is about, guess what? Ordinary men. And in that book, it's about a regiment of police officers who were just your standard guy that lived in Poland. Yeah, they weren't war criminals. They weren't psychopaths. But a series of events took place in the war that eventually led them to committing atrocities. And if you read their diaries in the beginning of the atrocities, you could see that they were battling with it, that it had affected them. They were killing innocent men, women, and children, and they were trying to justify it. They're like, if I didn't kill that kid, the kid would have starved to death. If I didn't do this, this could have happened. All these bigger evils could have occurred if I didn't do what I did. Yeah, so they're justifying it in the beginning. But then as time went on, they became so used to the events that they no longer cared. And then they stopped justifying it. It wasn't something that shocked them anymore. They became numb to it. When you're looking at like many of the brothers and sisters in Gaza, yeah, the life that they live is raw with horrors every day. Each and every one of them have experienced multiple deaths before they've even had a chance to even realize what death is. Yeah? Close people to them are dying in some of the most horrible ways you could imagine. Yeah, under heavy missile fire. Yeah, there's a large percentage of them are suffering from food anxiety. They're starving. Yeah, you've got an environment where from birth for over 70 years, they're in this open air prison. They're not allowed in or out. They're pretty much locked in this concentration camp. And they experience things me and you could never imagine. Yeah, the majority of us could never imagine ever having to go through this. I see my daughter stubs her toe on a bloody door and it bleeds a little bit, and I'm heartbroken by that. I'm like, oh, she's hurting, and I'm cuddling her. It's okay.
That reflects that Allah doesn't burden the soul more than it can handle, isn't it?
Yeah. And you look at the Gazans, yeah, and what they're going through. Our brothers and sisters in Palestine, they're going through horrors. And there's some mad thing. Like there's one where there's a video where there's a brother. He's got his daughter with him, and he's playing a game with her. And every time a bomb hits the floor,
oh yeah, she laughs.
She laughs.
Yeah, that was
SubhanAllah. Like I can't imagine. Wallahi, I could not imagine.
Yeah,
I could not imagine laughing. Yeah, the thought of it. But they've been experiencing these kind of things for so long, yeah, that it does not affect their hearts. Yeah. They've experienced severe violence. It
just becomes every day for them, pretty much.
Yeah. And so when you look at the events of October the 7th, yeah, we're looking at a bunch of people breaking out from extraordinary circumstances. Yeah, circumstances like the Norman Finkelstein described this situation perfectly. He said the people that broke out on October the 7th, it's probably the first time in their entire lives they'd ever left Gaza. Yeah, in their entire lives. And their whole time in Gaza, yeah, they've gone through these extreme circumstances. And can anyone truly say that we should be expecting anything but the craziest of things coming out of such an environment? How can you not say that if you were in such conditions? And people like to do this. They like to say or pretend. Listen, if I was in Nazi Germany before World War II kicked off, I would. There's that photo. Have you seen the famous photo of the guy in Nazi Germany who doesn't put his hand up? I've got too many tabs open. Yeah, this one. Everyone likes to act or likes to think they'd be this guy.
Yeah, but they'd just be another product of their time, essentially.
What are the chances? What are the chances that you, me, or anyone else would be this one person? Look at everyone else. The picture's much bigger. Everyone's got their hand up. Yeah. Everyone's shouting. I'm not going to say it. Someone's going to clip it. I'm like, oh, Yusuf Ponders is a Nazi. Like everyone is doing it, and he is not. But most people would like to think they'd be him. Yeah. But the data doesn't show that. The data shows that the majority of people can get pulled along by the whims and the fancies of the majority. Yeah, in extreme circumstances, people buckle, people cave. Yeah, and you have to ask yourself, if you lived in a world where the sound of explosions was a daily part of your life, where finding out every day someone you love or someone you know has died is a daily part of your life, and not just that, when you find out they've died, it's in the worst way possible. Parts of their bodies have been are off. Sometimes you don't even find all of the bodies or all of the body. Yeah, children with their heads, the schools open. Little girls lay on the floor because they don't even have hospitals because they've been bombed to crap. Lay on the floor with their guts hanging out, intestines out, and you can see her taking her last breaths. Tell me that. What are the chances you can go through all of that and not come out a monster? How difficult would it be to not be turned into a monster? Seeing that kind of stuff every day for your whole life, being born in it and never leaving it because you don't have a choice. You don't have an option. Yeah. This is the thing. Things, circumstances, environments can make a heart turn to stone. It can rob a man of empathy. It can rob a man of compassion, and it can lead them to committing crimes. Yeah. And you see it because it's not like you have these Muslims that go beyond the Sharia. Yeah. For example, there's some the extremists that might kill innocent people like women and children or the elderly or the sick, even though the Sharia specifically, explicitly writes that off. You're not allowed to. You're not allowed to kill innocent people. Yeah. Because the Quran and the Sunnah is very explicit about it. But we'll still find examples, and the anti-Muslim brings these up all the time, and they'll go, look, Muslims do this, Muslims do that. And if it's a white man, yeah, that's a serial killer that's done something, bet you, anytime that happens, straight up on the news, let's have a look at his life. He was suffering from mental health problems. If we look at his history, he had a lot of problems growing up. Look at this. This might explain why. However, when it comes to like, you have a Muslim do something extreme, none of these questions are brought up. It's just because of Islam. Just because of Islam. He's killed all of those innocent people because the Quran told him to. Even though the Quran and the Sunnah explicitly forbid such things and tell you not to transgress. And if you kill an innocent person, it's like you've killed all of mankind. Let's ignore those verses. The person identifies as a Muslim. That must be why. This is the issue. And this is where religion becomes a necessity. Yeah, because the fear of Allah, the fear of punishment in the Akhirah, the fear that everything is being accounted for. Every deed you do will be given to you on the day of judgment. You'll be given an account. No deed, nothing missing from it. And you will be held to account for everything you've ever done. Now, the person that has a heart of stone, that lacks empathy, that lacks care, that lacks the things that would have otherwise stopped him from doing that, like those who are raised in comfortable, luxurious environments that might be more empathetic, although it's not a guarantee that they will be either, because you get psychopaths coming from very rich backgrounds as well. And there's other reasons for that. But with the Sharia, for example, the killing of innocent people is not permitted, whether or not you feel empathy, whether or not it's something you want to do or you don't want to do. Yeah, it's something strictly forbidden. You just can't do it. Yeah, charity is incumbent upon you, whether or not you feel like doing it. You must do it. You ought to do it. Yeah, it is an obligation. And give more. Give so much that it hurts. Yeah, sadaqah jariyah, the optional extras. And you'll find Muslims are more charitable than, even just if we encompass all believers. Believers are, on average, 2 times more generous than the atheist. Theists are 2 times more generous than the atheist. More than 2 times. The Muslim in particular in UK gives on average about 370. The atheist gives on average about 117. The Christian gives on average about 170. The Jew gives on average about 270. Yeah. Why? Why doesn't it hurt? They can give £5. Can you hear me all right, by the way?
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, they can give £5, and if they've got 10 grand in the bank, they don't feel it. Yeah, and they'll only give as much up until the point where it begins to hurt, and then they'll stop. What about the Muslim? It's not like the Muslim isn't hurt when they give large amounts of money. It does. It's difficult, but we have a motivation because we restrain ourselves and we go, no, that's too much money. And they go, actually, if I give that, Allah will reward me even more because it was so hard. In fact, and people do it. And there's accounts of people doing things like this. Yeah, where they give so much that it hurts. Yeah. And then it's like, but Allah is going to give, and they can't wait for whatever Allah is going to give them in the akhirah. The atheist doesn't have that. Yeah. So, and they go on about these bloody, religions cause so much killing and blah, blah. Atheism has caused more deaths. Yeah. In the past 100 and odd years, 120 years, than religion has at all. If you look at disbelieving social systems, such as that of Stalin, that of Mao, that of insert
democracy even.
Yeah, democracy. Yeah. How many people died as a result of the wars
Vietnam.
on the war against terror? Yeah. Innocent people, civilians, men, women, and children, in the hundreds of thousands in the Middle East alone. Yeah. Because of secular nations.
Yep.
So what do we do with this? What do we do with this? But yeah, so I went on a huge ramble there. Yeah. But hopefully it gives you a bit more of an insight into what
was good. Yeah.
On the topic of morality and
yeah.
It's a massive subject.
Yeah, it is. One more question, sorry. It pertains to the when atheists comes and thinks they're smart and they bring up the Euthyphro dilemma.
The Euthyphro dilemma?
Yeah, because either option doesn't really fit. It doesn't fit with Allah, if that makes sense.
So I don't know how it doesn't matter which option. Yeah, so for me, it's a case of because they make it sound like one of just to recap, the Euthyphro dilemma is that there are two horns. What makes something good or bad? Is it good or bad in and of itself?
Yeah.
Or is it good or bad because Allah has commanded it? And they say if it is good or bad in and of itself, then we don't need Allah.
Yeah, it's inherently good or bad.
Yeah, so we don't need Allah to find out whether or not it's good or bad, which I would say is false. Yeah, because even if that was true, which I'm not going to concede to, even if that was true, then that doesn't mean you're going to be able to find it. It might be the case that you would still need to have have all of the knowledge, be all knowing, all wise, all this, all that. And insofar as you're not these things, insofar as you are a human, if that is the horn someone picks, that still demands that you turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He is in a better position to be able to tell you what the good is. And then they'll say, and if that is the case, then they'll act as if it is separate from Allah, as if it is an existing entity outside of Him.
Yeah.
They treat it like an object in the world. Yeah. But that's not what morality is. We mentioned that morality is regarding it's a contract between beings. Yeah, between one that's subservient to another. So insofar as you're talking about things being good, that goodness only exists in a relationship between an authority and that which is being ruled over. Yeah. It doesn't make sense to talk about morality outside of that. What you ought to do, what you ought not to do. In relation to what? In relation to how we behave and live together. Yeah. It's a contract. And contracts require parties. And if you get rid of parties, if you get rid of the people, the contract becomes meaningless. You're not really referring to anything. So I'd say that it's necessarily it's the idea of morality is dependent upon the existence of people and that they have a contract with something of authority. Now let's say you take the other horn. What they'll then say is, well then it's arbitrary.
Yeah, because it's whatever God says, but they don't take into consideration that Allah, for instance, has certain attributes.
Exactly, and this is and it's not just random. It's according to His wisdom. It's according to His will. It's according to His purpose, the purpose that He sets with His wisdom, with His knowledge, with His mercy, with His justice. He is all of these, and so the commandments He gives are in relation to that.
Yeah.
and it's a part of his essence. Yeah, his attributes are a part of his essence, and so it's not independent from him.
Yeah,
It doesn't
yeah.
exist outside in the world like an object. It's not arbitrary. He's not just doing things like he says in the Quran in multiple places. Do you think I just do this without purpose, without reason? No, he's created everything with a purpose, with a reason, and our moral contract is connected to that purpose and to that reason. Yeah, so it's not arbitrary at all. So both of them, regardless of which one,
Yeah,
there's a problem.
it doesn't really apply. So
Yeah.
would we say that would be our response to that, for instance?
Well,
Because
that was my response.
yeah,
There may be some people that disagree.
because
I'd
yeah,
have
because
to
I
hear
understood
what they have to say. But
what I understood what it entailed, but I just didn't quite know how to respond to it because I knew that like either one wouldn't do Allah justice and
yeah,
just didn't apply, but I wasn't sure quite how to. But I
it's
guess yeah,
it's an oversimplification
yeah, it is an
of,
oversimplification.
and what they do, they oversimplify
Yeah,
the idea
it's
of morality, the idea
what
of
they
God.
think of God is essentially.
Yeah, and then a problem comes out of this oversimplification. But then when you take into consideration more information,
Yeah.
you climb that watchtower.
Yeah.
Then
That's yeah.
you start to see the whole contention sort of dissolves or falls apart. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we'll have to leave it there.
Sure.
Jazakallah khair for joining us.
Thank you.
I'll say farewell to you and we'll speak another time, inshallah.
Inshallah.
But Jazakallah khair for your questions. Barakallahu
Assalamu
feek.
alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brother Hashim, I can see you're in the back. Very sorry, but I am going to have to go now just because I need to get home. It's very late right now, and we've been streaming for a lot longer than we usually do. We tried to go for about an hour and a half. We've done 2 hours. You can book a meeting with us if you want to discuss. And again, it's free of charge. And if you just go to this link here, you can book a private one-to-one, which is free of charge, or join us again nice and early next month. It should be the first Thursday of January, inshallah. And if you come on, I'll prioritize you. If I see you, just make mention that you were on the last stream, inshallah, and I'll bring you on. But yeah, Jazakallah khair to everyone. Forgive me for not addressing many of the comments. I'll try to have a look through them another day, inshallah. But for the time being, I hope everything that's been said today has helped you all, or at least helped you to understand certain things. May Allah bless you all. Anything incorrect I've said, may Allah please forgive me. It's from myself. Anything good, it's come from Allah. And yeah, like I said, this is all part of the Sapiens Institute project. Just to recap, for those of you who joined much later, we're advertising our Lighthouse project. I put the link there, where you can book a free private meeting with one of our mentors to discuss your doubts. You can go to our website, which is sapiensinstitute.org/lighthouse. And in doing so, you can book a meeting, or you go to sapiensinstitute.org. There's a little button there that says Lighthouse. You book a meeting, you pick your date, etc. You write in what it is you want to discuss. Be specific. Don't be vague. Don't be lazy. But don't write a book. And it's for anyone. If you're a Muslim, an ex-Muslim, a non-Muslim, a new Muslim, and you have issues or doubts that make you think that Islam might not be true, you're having shubahat, waswas, these kind of things, or problems that make you think you might leave Islam, we can discuss these with you, and inshallah try to help you to overcome them. Or if you're in the second category and you're a student or a leader, like an activist, community leader, an imam, so on and so forth, and you have to, or a duat, someone who's a preacher, engaged in dawah, and you're having to deal with people in these first categories. If you're having to deal with Muslims, ex-Muslims, new Muslims, non-Muslims, and you're coming across questions you're not really quite sure how to deal with them. For example, the youth ithro dilemma, like we just discussed, issues related to morality, issues related to the Quran, apologetic issues that might either bring someone into Islam or prevent them from entering Islam, and you wish to discuss that, you can book a meeting as well, and we can help you, inshallah. And we are in the process with Brother Zubair, who was with us earlier, of adding a third category, which is going to be new Muslim support, which is going to be specifically aimed at mentoring and helping new Muslims. But you've got these two options at the moment: addressing doubts and questions, which is the shubahat. If you're suffering and you're not sure if you believe in Islam, or you're not sure you believe Allah exists, or you're not sure you believe Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a messenger, you can book a meeting. Or if you're engaged in leadership or activism, i.e., dawah, you're an imam, you're a family member who's brother or sister or auntie or uncle or children coming to them with questions that you don't quite know how to answer, and you're worried about the iman, you can book a meeting with that as well. And inshallah, we can talk to you, we can assist you, and try to help you developing as a person, as a Muslim, inshallah. I hope you're all well. Brother Hashim's writing something in the back. So he says, I think it would be beneficial to share these one-to-one meetings publicly with the consent of the people who are being helped. So the thing is because for legal reasons, we just can't do that. It's part of the contract. We might be able to update it where if the person gives consent, we can share it potentially. But I think people, they sort of get scared that if there's a possibility at all, they don't want to book a meeting. So we just sort of leave that off the table for the time being. There's also loads of legal aspects we need to be concerned with. But Jazakallah khair for your input. I'll have a look into it. But we'll leave it there for the time being. Again, Jazakallah khair to all of you. Don't just make use of the Lighthouse mentoring. We've also got the learning platform with a load of free courses on there, including the No Doubt one. We've got books which we're releasing for free. We've got articles which you can read, essays, answers to specific questions. We've got, what else? We've got book reviews, audio books. So if you want to listen to my book rather than reading it, you can listen to an audio book. We've got it in Spanish. We've got lots of stuff here. So check out the website. Check out the YouTube channel. We've got the Londonia and things like that on there. Live streams that happen every now and then. There's previous live streams that we discussed. There's lots of stuff for you to benefit from. And we'll leave it there for the time being. Jazakallah khair to all of you. Again, apologies for not being able to pay much attention to the comments section. I hope you can forgive me. But other than that, we shall now end the stream. And until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.